Hey everyone, welcome to Expansion Cast. Expansion Cast is a magical podcast I created so people could find simple or unconventional solutions to expand their personal awareness and experience. This podcast is dedicated towards revealing people's divine truth and how that divine truth works its way out into the world, one by one, helping liberate each of us on our personal path to freedom. If you love this podcast, please give us a rating and share. Today I'd like to welcome Kat Moon with Mutha Earth. Kat's been doing some pretty cool stuff with mushrooms, and I don't know a whole lot about mushrooms, but I'm sure Kat's going to tell me lots today. And so,
Oh, absolutely.
So welcome, Kat.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to dive into the realm of mushrooms and all other herbal goodies.
So, where do we start? Where do we start on this journey?
Ooh, well, I can dive into where I started and kind of how it unfolded, kind of what brought me into where I currently am, I guess. That works for you?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So several years ago, I was interested in pursuing a career in nursing, and in that I had just wanted to do something that was in the healing realm that was, going to help people get healthy essentially. And so my option at that point, I thought, okay, I can either be a nurse or I go to school to be a doctor. Like that was just that was my scope at that point. So I had entered into the nursing program at the Lethbridge College, and in that, I started my studies, and in that time period, I was going through my own health issues. I had sleep insomnia, I had mood swings, I had literally no menstrual cycle. So if you've heard of amenorrhea, so basically my hormones were completely out of whack. So there was all of these things that I was experiencing that was calling me to look deeper into what's actually going on. So I basically had exhausted the medical community from getting different tests and them looking into what was going on, what they thought was going on, and their solutions that they provided were not. I seen them more so as they were just going to control those symptoms and not really heal what was actually going on. And so in my own pain and curiosity, I decided that I needed to pursue an alternative way of addressing these symptoms and really getting to the root cause of what was actually going on. So in that, and then at that same time, I was still going to school to be a nurse, and a lot of stuff was coming up where I was just starting to address and look at more so that I should pursue a holistic path. And in that, I have complete respect, and I respect nurses and doctors in the medical community. Definitely being one to say that there's connection. Both sides are needed. There's not one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So inevitably that led me to pursuing a alternative way of healing. So going to school for holistic nutrition and health coaching, and inevitably learning about this holistic way of living, looking at all different sides and really diving into nutrition and nutrient dense nutrition and superfoods. And in this, I had actually healed my body, brought back my menstrual cycle, have amazing sleep, great energy, clear mental health, all of that good stuff. So, seeing the complete 180 in my own journey really gave me that motivating force, and felt as though it was my duty to be able to share these teachings and these foods with my community. So that is what was inspired, and really just seeing that there's a lot of people on the planet that are needing healing and needing assistance in those areas and just finding health, tapping into a more balanced way of living, essentially. So that's where it started, where at that point I had started just doing personalized nutrition coaching and really just helping people find what foods worked for their bodies. And a lot of it was like plant-based eating. I had done a lot of experimenting with different diets and different lifestyles and different practices and tools. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it started. And then as it started to evolve, I started to become really interested in superfoods. And again, those were the foods that had really healed me. So like medicinal mushrooms like chaga and reishi, cordyceps, maitake, turkey tail. Those are all several mushrooms that I work with and offer through my product line. But then all the other superfoods that are most commonly known through Ayurvedic system and or traditional Chinese medicine, so like schizandra berry, ginseng, maca, ashwagandha, cacao, all these other foods that at times can sound like a whole other language, and to some degree, they are, but yeah, so that really inspired me to start to source out these foods and again have them so that they were accessible. Quality was accessible to my community. Yeah, so that's short, or long story short, I suppose, in that sense. That's brought me now to this present day.
So let's talk about the present day, and then let's go into how you can identify what foods maybe the body needs.
Sure.
Yeah. So what's the present day look like?
So the present day?
Yeah, the present day. Yeah. What does it look like for you?
So we've got a shop in Medicine Hat where we've got a full product line. There's several different blends that we use that they can just be simply added into people's like soups, salads, smoothies, but the favorite is the elixirs. So a botanical drink that works as a delivery system to really help the body get more nutrients, essentially. So yeah, so we've also got a elixir bar in Mutha Earth, and with that, people can tangibly try out the drinks before they commit to buying a bag. Yeah, and then right now in my work, I am doing still the one-on-one coaching, but that's really evolved to a point where I always laugh and I say like nutrition is like the gateway. It's like the doorway in. But really we're doing some like really deep work around transitioning out of patterns that are no longer serving individuals, no longer serving them essentially. So it's like really getting out of limiting belief systems and then finding foods and lifestyle that supports their vision and their goals so that they can, live their life by design and not from a place of being stuck in trauma or poor habits, that sort of stuff. So that's what I'm doing right now, but I've also been building an online course called Rebirth, which I'm planning to launch in the next month. And that's just shifting that work to be through 90 days instead of just 4 weeks, and really deepening the practice and doing more of a group dynamic rather than just the one-on-one. So that's more so like what my day-to-day is looking like, or like my current like projects. But in regards to assisting somebody in finding what foods work for them, it really comes down, there's so many different aspects to it. And that's one thing that I really emphasize when I'm working with somebody, is that there's no one way of eating or one way of living that's really going to be like that Staples easy button. It's really around finding what works for one's genetics, what works for one's where they live, so the actual geography, what local foods, that sort of thing. And then of course into things like price point, what can somebody afford to do, and really what are people's goals. So I have people come to me who, let's say somebody's really working on gut health, that's going to look different than somebody who's coming to me for like circulatory health. And so a lot of things are universal, and especially with these superfoods, they really do benefit so many different aspects of the body that but of course then there's still different practices and a plan in place for each individual's needs. So essentially I get them to go through a consultation with me, and then in that I get a really good idea as to who they are on varying levels, and where they want to take themselves and their health too. So yeah, that sort of thing.
That sounds amazing. So, what are you seeing um, a very specific pattern in people right now?
I definitely am. I'm seeing that there's a lot of stored trauma in the body that is then manifesting itself through, like, let's say, like, belief systems, and that is coming out on how they treat themselves, how they're choosing to eat is a direct representation of these unprocessed emotions, essentially, and or, let's say, traumas to some degree. So that's one thing, is just really seeing that it's like, okay, it's our belief systems and this emotional baggage, essentially, that then is creating a lot of issues in one's choices. And the other thing too, of course, I'm seeing a lot of people with gut health issues and hormonal imbalances and mental health. Those are like the three top ones. And what I'm finding, of course, is like the modern up-to-date researchers, it proves that all those systems are so interconnected that and that's really what I like to, I find it helps people have a sense of relief when, they might come to me with like this like list of like, I've got this wrong, or this is going on, and at first it's almost like they're really seeing it as all separate. And then it's overwhelming, because they're like, well, my God, where do I even begin? And really it's shifting that perception of seeing that everything's all interconnected, the whole body is interconnected, and by focusing on one of those areas, it's going to ripple into impacting positively the other systems. So the gut being really like the epicenter of our health, really working on creating a very diverse microbiome, reducing inflammation, really feeding the body with the probiotics and prebiotics, and then that's where mushrooms come in. So mushrooms are actually one of the top foods on the planet that can assist us in diversifying our gut microbiome, essentially. And so with that, they're creating a gut that actually is intelligent, essentially. It can protect itself against viruses and or bad bacteria, and then provide a space to then fuel the good bacteria. And then that's what I mean by having a very diverse gut microbiome, is diverse in good bacteria. What makes these mushrooms so special is that there's a couple different things, but in regards to the gut, they contain what's called beta-D glucans and long-chain polysaccharides, which basically are like, if you were to look at their molecular structures underneath a microscope, you'd see these very complex structures that feed our system and turn our system on like nothing else possibly can. So it's really like when we're ingesting these, it's almost like we're putting that like master key into the door and turning it over and clicking and opening it up. So of course, with like a more intelligent and interconnected gut, that's also going to play into the whole body. So it's going to help reduce inflammation. It's going to help with energy. It's going to help with sleep. But my interest is how it affects us mentally, with being connected to, there's just about as many neurotransmitters in the gut, and we actually release more, almost up to like, it's about up to 80% of our serotonin and dopamine through our gut. So it's like having a healthy gut is really going to be beneficial for us in just living, a life that we want to live, a quality life, that we're able to be present, we're able to be healthy, and respond to our life rather than, let's say, like, react. And yeah, these foods, they make us more intelligent in that. So with the mushrooms too, a lot of them carry adaptogenic properties, and what I like about the adaptogens is if you just look at the word itself, it's adaptin gene is. So if you looked at like, okay, well, adaptin gene, it's quite literally they turn on all of your expression of your genes that you'd want expressed. So if we look at our genes as though if they were like a light switch, so it's like if you were to carry on with the same lifestyle habits and or patterns, ways of eating, ways of living as, let's say, your parents and or grandparents and or ancestors, then you're quite literally going to mirror that same health. That's where we hear like, it's in the genes, it's hereditary, it's, and so it's not that's definitely true, but it's also, we can do something about that. So by adding in adaptogens, we can turn on the light switches of our genes that then the gene is expressing its highest function. It's
So,
actually, yeah.
so I want to put this into real perspective. So I have my gene analysis came back to me a year or two ago, and the big one in there was Alzheimer's. So what would you say to do about that? Like, how am I turning that off and on? What's going on there?
So to turn, let's say if you were going down the route of having Alzheimer's, that would be like if you were perpetually stressed, and in that, like, your body's releasing cortisol, and the cortisol, like, our hormones they dictate our cellular function. And so with this cortisol, it's going to be activating a state of stress, which then basically puts the body into a state where that's then like disease and or illness is inevitable. So the other would be that you would add in like an adaptogen, such as, or an ingredient like the lion's mane mushroom. So lion's mane mushroom has been studied to not only help with degenerative diseases and protecting the myelin sheath around the nervous system, so that we don't see things like Alzheimer's, but then also adding in foods that have that adaptogenic property. So that's literally helping the body with its stress response. So it's not that it blocks the cortisol release, but it reduces the amount of time that the cortisol release is basically controlling your cells in your system.
So basically, it's kind of forcing me into a de-stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So adaptogens, they literally help the body adapt to stress.
Okay.
And that's where it's tapping us into our body, into like its intelligence. So it's showing when it helps the body, like I was saying, stop the cortisol from creating more issues. So that's almost like you're responding still to stressors, because fight or flight is there for a reason. If we're actually needing to like get out of a stressful experience, like we need that cortisol to like pump through us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when it lingers and or when we're in that perpetual state, then it's not going to serve us.
Right. So one thing you said was that the gut has lots of serotonin and dopamine development, I guess. How does that work?
So there's the neurotransmitters, that those are like the interconnected web of the body, that they're, when you have a thought, let's say, the synapses are firing, and if your body's not operating, let's say, optimally, then you're not going to be releasing or communicating. Those chemical messengers aren't going to be able to be firing and connecting, which then you're not going to be able to release the serotonin and dopamine, essentially. They can also be blocked. So with that, when your body's in that healthy, balanced state, essentially it can be able to actually secrete the serotonin and dopamine appropriately.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. So how do hugs increase the dopamine? Is it dopamine?
Well, those would be definitely and oxytocin.
Oh, yeah, oxytocin. Is that in the gut too?
I don't actually know about the oxytocin's where that's fully released, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But with the heart, I mean, the heart is another a very interconnected system of neurotransmitters, and so with that too, human touch as well. It doesn't have to just be heart on heart, but that also has many benefits. But with that hug, just human touch, human interaction, and especially in our world right now, I think it's so important to be able to have that human touch, that real connection. We're more connected than we've ever been with these incredible devices, but at the same time, I'm seeing this that there's a sense of disconnection, and a lot of that I think really comes to back down to our food source and down to our lifestyle again. How are we connected to the earth, and connected to a community within that and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, tell me how you develop, like I think your mushroom offerings.
My mushroom offerings, like from like the product
Yeah,
or
the product
the
line.
beverage.
How did you develop the product line?
Oh, okay. Well, that was started with the mission, I guess, and then the vision of it was, getting clear on the vision. But with the mushrooms right now, I've sourced them out from multiple places all over the planet. I tried to do as local as I possibly could, but I also was really focused on them being wild, just fruiting bodies, so none of the mycelial mass in these. And then they had to have been through the right extraction process, which is either dual extract, hot water extract, or alcohol extract, and then or as naturally grown as possible. So that would be still outdoors or in like a greenhouse with like natural lighting, versus mushrooms grown in a lab, which there are lots of products out there where that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was the sourcing aspect of it. I still do a lot of my own foraging, but those I'm typically not selling to the public at this point. And inevitably, I would love to work towards actually growing my own mushrooms. It's just quite an undertaking at this point. So so then with the sourcing of everything, and then with that too comes in looking into the labeling and all the legal side of things, essentially. So being able to put your name on the bag, being able to put that they're organic, that they're wild, that they've been verified by scientific analysis, all that sort of thing. So lots of research and lots of paperwork. And then and then there's just been a lot of sharing with people. So really getting out there and talking with people at markets and through the storefront. And right now we're focused on doing more content creation. So being able to just further educate people on how to utilize these, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So the elixirs that you have, are they mixed with different mushrooms, or what? How are they put together?
So they've got several different ingredients. It really depends on what kind of elixir we're creating. So usually with an elixir, it's got a herbal element. So that could be the mushrooms. You don't necessarily have to use the mushrooms in the elixir. You could also just use like your favorite tea, essentially. Anything that has like a herbal element, it needs a herbal element, a fat, so like coconut oil, cacao butter, ghee, and then what's called the menstruum, which is basically just the liquid. So if you're using just the tea, or milk, I usually like to do a 50-50, so like half of a tea and then half milk. And then with that, it's milk of choice. So we use all plant-based milks and nut-based milks. So like almond milk, cashew, hemp, coconut, that sort of thing. So and then a sweetener of choice, or you can make it medicinally more like on the bitter end, with less sweetener, or exploring other sweeteners that are, of course, natural. So we're using like raw honey, real maple syrup, stevia, monk fruit, those sort of things. Like stevia and monk fruit are really fantastic because they don't, they keep the blood sugar balanced. Essentially, it doesn't throw it out of whack. So those are a nice option for people who are really concerned about that. So you have your herbal element. So sometimes I make them. Most often they've got mushrooms in them, but we've got several different products that also don't have mushrooms in them. So like one of our blends is called Chill Out, and that has turmeric, like ginger, pepper, cayenne. It's got lucuma in it, cardamom, that sort of thing. And so throw that in to the blender, and then I usually steam a little bit of milk, make like a herbal tea, toss it in a little bit of sweetener, and then blend it up. And these drinks can typically be served hot or cold. And we found that they're a lot of fun to make, and we've got lots of good feedback from individuals who are enjoying this process. So you can still make them with coffee, but a lot of times, and that's another common thing that's coming up for people, is that they don't want to be so dependent on coffee, but they still want to be able to enjoy like a hot beverage. So one drink that we've suggested with that is the herbal hot chocolate. So it's using raw pure cacao, which is another superfood that I work hand in hand with, that also has a really nice synergy with mushrooms. So we get this raw cacao from Ecuador, and it's the Criollo strain. So it's quite literally some of the purest chocolate on the planet. So it's basically like making like a hot chocolate. You throw the cacao powder in, a little bit of the cacao butter, your milk, tea, and then you could put the mushroom in if you wanted to, or you could put something else, like if you wanted to do like maca or ginseng, that sort of thing, whatever kind of superfood you're feeling, and blend it all up. And what I find with that drink is it is very stimulating, but it's not overstimulating like coffee can be, and it's not as hard on the adrenals. Cacao is one of the best foods for our brains, essentially. So they've shown that it lights up parts of the brain that have to do with creativity, memory, focus, and so if people are trying to get stuff done, which is typically with coffee, people are using it for like a little bit of buzz and stimulation, but to be able to like be productive and get stuff done. I find cacao has that same ability, but there's less crash and there's more health benefits to it as well. It being a fermented food, so good for the gut, amazing for the circulatory system, very, very, very warming and literally heart opening, with it being like a vasodilator. And then anything that it's paired with, it basically drives it deeper into the cells. So if you're pairing it with a mushroom, you're going to get more out of it. Essentially. So you're going to get more out of your time spent making the drink, having this synergistic combo, and then also more out of like your dollar spent, of course.
That's pretty cool. So
it's been fun.
do you ship this stuff all over? Do you have like pre-mixed and pre-bagged stuff you ship?
Yeah. Everything's all pre-mixed. We mix it up in the shop and do all the bagging there. So right now we've been shipping across Canada, and doing some into the States as well. But it's more so local right now that is our main supporters. So Medicine Hat and Lethbridge, Tabor, Brooks, that sort of thing.
So are there some stores in the area that people can pick your stuff up at?
So at this point, in Medicine Hat, we've got our storefront downtown, and then there's the Heartwood Cafe. They're offering our products, and they're also serving our elixirs on bars. So we created them a little elixir drink menu. And then there's a master herbalist here in town, Sherry Hone, who she supplies it through her business, her storefront called Journey to Health. There's another gal, Christy Campbell, she's a yoga teacher and an Ayurvedic practitioner. So she also offers the goods out of her space here in Medicine Hat, which is her business is Shakti Love. And then in Lethbridge, as of right now, we are looking to offer our products through Heart Space Yoga Studio. So that's going to be happening in the next month or two. So so that's happening. But as of right now, it's just more so when we're at markets We also have a gal, Caitlin Bellavance in Fernie, so she is also supplying the goodies out there. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the goal for 2020 is to do some expansion and to get them into more locations and have them more available for people.
So when we're talking about mushrooms, everybody's gonna always, the mind always goes to shrooms, to the different kinds of mushrooms. What's the difference between these mushrooms and uh, the ones that make
The
us?
psilocybin.
Yeah.
So the psilocybin are psychoactive mushrooms, so they're going to stimulate the brain and bring us into altered states of consciousness. So with those, right now they actually are going through their decriminalization, which then through a decriminalization leads to legalization, and then um, once that's passed, the plan is that it'll be used for um, therapeutic use, because there's enough research showing that they do have medicinal properties that are beneficial for one's mental health, especially for people who have gone through PTSD. But those will be more so available through um, like certain doctors and or therapists, psychologists especially.
Mm-hmm.
That's from what I understand, that's what's going to be going on with those. So they do share medicinal properties in that regard, but these ones are medicinal mushrooms. So the medicinal mushrooms are non-psychoactive. So they're not going to lead somebody on a journey quite like that, but they're medicinal in a different way. So in a way that they're, again, helping the body adapt to stress, they're improving the gut, they're helping with the circulatory system, they're antiviral, antifungal, even though they are a mushroom, but against like the bad fungi. They look different, every mushroom, even though they all have they can have similar characteristics. There's some that are the wood mushroom, like the reishi or the shaga, which is a conch mushroom. So these are very wood-like, and so they look different than, let's say, like a ground mushroom, which the psilocybin is. So I guess appearance and offerings would be what separates them.
What else can you tell me about mushrooms? Is there anything else like I'd want to know as a consumer?
Oh, absolutely. The one thing that I really love about them is that we share, it was something about around 67% of the same DNA.
That's a
So
fair
we
bit.
quite literally, we share that much same genes with them, essentially, same genetic makeup. So with us having so much of the same DNA, since they've been here for way longer, that we're told, is they've went through environmental stressors and shifts in the environment and had to adapt. And so by us taking these mushrooms, we quite literally are also, we are literally adapting. We can really gain from them what they've built up millennials to do. So I find that really fascinating. And then also, if you look at mushrooms in nature, the actual mushroom, just like the fruiting body, that's just the fruiting body. So that's like the larger organisms, actually the mycelial web, which goes down underground and creates a neural network. It's literally what communicates between trees and different species within the ecosystem. So they create this web of communication, essentially. That's another thing that I really find fascinating about these mushrooms. And one thing that I like to do is, if we observe something in nature, we can really learn about its truth and its offerings, essentially. So, if it's doing that within the environment, it's creating more connections, deepening communication. It's like, well, if we're taking it then, and it's also doing that within our body, creating more, it's knitting our system, essentially. It's helping the system communicate more clearly within itself, but then also connecting us deeper to the earth. and remembering, more of that, we are a piece of this earth. This our environment matters, and we can see that big shift happening on our planet where people are starting to pay attention to our environmental impact. And I've firm belief that these foods really help us awaken to that more so and deepen our connection.
So we're not, when we get the products though, they have zero mycelium, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a benefit to having mycelium or not?
So the ones that why we decided not to do them is because it is creating a more medicinally potent offering. So versus if you have mycelium in your product, there's no way to actually harvest the mycelium naturally from so anything that has mycelium in it has been grown in the lab, and then you're dealing with different substrates that are involved, which like wheat is a commonly used one. So there's a lot of people that have wheat allergies or sensitivities. So there's just more complications running into if you're going that way. But the mycelium products, they're more so like for maintenance. So you're still going to get gut benefits, but they're not going to have that anti-cancerous properties and like the really medicinal aspects that these medicinal mushrooms have been studied and proven to be able to offer.
So is it like the mushroom is basically the brain of the whole thing, and then the mycelium is basically the communication strands?
I guess I would say it's more so like the opposite. I would say the mycelium is like the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the nervous system. It's like the communicating aspect, and then the fruiting body is, I guess it is still it's concentrated medicine within that.
Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of the offspring.
Yes, yeah. So you're still gonna get that benefit through it, but the main like organism is the mycelial web.
Right. But I would think that all the intelligence of the mycelium would be in the mushroom.
Oh yeah, okay, totally, yeah, it is.
Oh yeah, okay.
Even though the mycelium's more so like underground throughout the tree.
Yeah. So where are the spores in all this?
So the spores are on the mushroom essentially, but usually in the gills or underneath where the underneath part of the mushroom.
Right. And so you harvest the spores also.
Yes.
Okay, so the spores come in my tea.
Yes.
So
Depending on the extraction. So if you're going to be doing like there's different extractions that you can really get the benefits of the spores, which is something that I haven't done much of. We're so focused on like the fruiting body. Yeah.
well, in the future, I'm going to look forward to a podcast about spores.
Okay, deal. We could definitely do that.
So tell me about, I think you alluded to that mushrooms are kind of just a small or a part of what you're doing. What else is there for intelligent medicines or intelligent foods?
So a couple of the other favorite ones that I'm working with are, I would say in general, adaptogens are what we're focusing on. So adaptogens are the classification of different herbal medicines. And in that tonic herbs, so tonic herbs being herbs that you can use for extended periods of time, and there's no ill side effects. You can use large doses of them. There's something that they need to in order to be classified as a tonic herb, tonic adaptogen herb. It's something that you need to be able to enjoy and be able to use on a consistent basis. Versus something like echinacea, for example, you would want to be very exact about its use, and you're not going to be using it for extended periods of time. And a lot of that falls under it being a immune modulator, so like unidirectional or just one way. So like these tonic herbs, they help the immune system, they modulate the immune system essentially. So it can, if you have an underactive immune system, it can boost it. If you have an overactive immune system, it can lower it down and make it find that balanced state. Whereas something like echinacea, it's only a one way. So it can only, let's say, boost the immune system. So with these, a lot of the foods that we're working with are like Schizandra berry, which is the 5-flavor berry. So it literally touches every point of our taste buds. So whether it be like salty, sour, umami, sweet, and bitter, it has all those aspects to it. It's also amazing for blood building. It's detoxifying. It helps with our libido, so female and male reproductive tendencies. It's also adaptogenic, of course, so it's going to help the body literally adapt to stress. So that's another one of my favorite ones that we offer. That one's in our product called Luniverse, which has 11 other superfoods in it. A couple other superfoods that are in there are maca, the ashwagandha, foti, there's goji berry, lotus pollen, beetroot, cacao. We definitely, like I mentioned earlier, we work with a lot of raw chocolate. Little chocolate daily definitely can be really powerful medicine if it's the raw stuff. Those are some common ones that we're also working with. Lots of different seaweeds. So we have a product called Zoomer's broth that has 4 mushrooms, 7 seaweeds, and then like your typical like veggie broth. So it's a powder, but it's extremely nutrient dense, and it really helps the body get all the essential vitamins and minerals that you need. So it's really great for building a strong gut, strong bones, like really remineralizing the body. Because what I find too is, even in my journey with like, I used to have to eat so much food to actually then feel satisfied, to actually feel full. And there's many different sides of that. So of course there's the emotional side of things, finding emotional balance plays a big piece in that, and not eating for emotions. But on the nutritional side, really seeing that a lot of our foods, most foods, even the organic ones at the grocery store, unfortunately, but are deficient in nutrients. And so they're offering us calories, but they're not offering us nutrients. And so that's a big difference. So it's basically like eating a lot of empty calories. So when the body actually gets the nutrients that it needs, it can perform and function as we need it to. And so that's what I noticed in my journey is like I eat a significantly less amount of food than I used to, because I've incorporated in just such high quality, nutrient dense foods. And I see it time and time again with my clients, same sort of thing. So it really is one of the best investments people can make in themselves, is it's feeding us on such a deep cellular level, and it's really getting our body essentially what it needs.
Yeah. I totally agree with all this. It kind of reminds me of using reverse osmosis water versus spring water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, reverse osmosis has absolutely nothing, and as far as I could tell, it probably strips actually minerals from our body as it goes through. And then where spring water actually feeds our body.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, with even the coaching, so the coaching that I'm doing, starting out with the nutrition plans, it's really getting people to explore wild, local, nutrient dense foods that still have their genetic integrity, but definitely consider like water sources. All of that plays into our cellular makeup, that the cells then create the tissues and the organs and the systems, and then it allows us to house certain levels of consciousness too. So definitely really, really important that people I think just explore the options that are out there, rather than the sad diet, the standard American diet, which even with it too, what I've found is transitioning from even using the word diet and more so really looking at lifestyle. So, to live it rather than to diet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Choosing words. Yeah.
Power of language.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing your products in Lethbridge. Yeah, so if I can help with that in any way, let me know.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to well, the plan is to get them up there, but I would love to have you try them out. And yeah, if you have any suggestions as to places that you feel like would be a good fit, or if you know anybody that's, searching for things like this, there's yeah, I would
Or
really, really appreciate
yeah, I don't know if I have any other questions about mushrooms or your offerings. It's all pretty cool. I like the naming convention that you used. Um, However, I think maybe one thing that piqued my mind was the chocolate. And I think
it.
there's something about that natural raw cacao having DMT. So having enough of that raw cacao can actually increase our dreams and our creative process, right?
So it actually works as a MAO inhibitor. So from my understanding, it doesn't contain DMT, but
Mm.
because it has the MAO inhibitor, if it's paired with DMT, that's essentially DMT needs an MAO inhibitor in order for you to have that journey, to have that experience, to be able to, yeah, that. But so there's that, but it contains something called anandamide, which translates to the bliss molecule or the love molecule. So it quite literally helps our body tap into states of love and
Uh,
bliss, which then we're in a more harmonious, happy place. And then it is balancing for the hormones. So if our hormones are balanced, our endocrine system's balanced, then we're going to have better sleep. And then if we're sleeping better, then our brain naturally releases DMT.
mhm.
So yes. And that's even, in my journey, I've really shifted and being able to really experience a different type of life and a different view on reality from getting healthy. And like now that's really falls in my mission, because like, if everybody on this planet were to, let's say, heal their bodies or just nourish their bodies with nutrient dense foods and a nourishing balanced lifestyle, it's like we can tap into our greater potential. And it's proven that when the body isn't stressed, we become more creative, we become more loving, we in general are more connected to each other. And so since I've experienced that, from going, let's say, from being someone that was numb from life and in pain, and not even really realizing how bad it was, let's say, but of course in hindsight things are 2020.
Mhm. Hmm.
And then now, I've seen that in my clients, getting having people's testimonials and feedback, in it becoming almost like a spiritual experience. This one gal that I worked with a couple of months ago, she came to me for wanting to just have better skin, which there's nothing wrong with that. Of course we want radiant, beautiful, glowing skin and whatnot. But I always like to challenge people to dig deeper as to, like, okay, well, beyond that, what's actually going on. So anyway, so that's what she came to me for. And after working together, she had completely revolutionized her life. And she was like, she's like, I had no idea to some degree what that this would have this great of an impact on me, because it awoke her to being more self-realized, more aware, and more in control of herself and her life. And that's really where I want to take people, is into that realize, that self-actualized, more masterful state of being.
Hmm. You said more in control of her life. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
what? More in control of your life? What do you mean by that?
right. And you don't know till you know.
More in control of your health.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like we can't control the things that happen to us by any means, and that can create a lot of stress and anxiety in if we're trying to control our external. But we can definitely do things to position ourselves and respond appropriately, I suppose.
Yeah. Well said. Yes. Yeah. So tell me about how, from your experience, how your emotional body has responded to mushrooms.
I find that so emotionally, and I'll say like the do you want just, I'm gonna group mushrooms into like, let's say like superfoods or just really like nutrient dense, genetically intact foods. Is that okay? Or do you want, because it's hard for me to really decipher. I'm aware of what mushrooms brought to me, but it's more so I'd say like the superfoods in general, like the synergy
Okay.
between all of them.
Okay. Yeah.
I found that they've genuinely given me a sense of connection. I'm more connected to my food source. I'm more connected to what I'm putting in my body, and then how that's how I literally feel different. So I'm more clear. I'm more, and then in that, when you're more clear, I find that I've been able to be more confident and be able to be more of myself, because I'm not dealing with, let's say, like low energy and or poor sleep, that sort of thing. So really, how it ripple affecting from balancing out my very literal physical structure, but then through that, rippling into the emotional. So I feel a lot more emotionally aware, and balanced, essentially.
Yeah. So I guess thank you again for being here.
Likewise, it was an absolute pleasure. I really looked forward to it, and I really enjoyed our nourishing conversation. And I appreciate your interest in what I've got going on.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Um, so how can people get a hold of you? What's your website and all that stuff?
So people can find me at muthaearth.ca. So it's MUTHA. So like Mutha Earth .ca. And then on Instagram, it's at Mutha Earth, same spelling, and then underscore. So, and then on Facebook, same sort of thing. If you Google Mutha Earth, that'll show up too. So,
Okay, and
yeah.
I'll put your stuff on the bottom of the notes for the podcast. And yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah, you're welcome. This podcast is Expansion Cast. Thank you for listening.